from Game of the Year to overwhelmingly negative on Steam, the Overwatch franchise has been through its fair share of ups and downs. A lot of that blame has been placed on Overwatch 2, the sequel which was never really a sequel. But how bad is this sequel really? Overwatch 2 has been out for quite a long time now, so I think I can finally give it an honest review. Just how good is Overwatch 2? Well, in this video I'll be discussing each of these 6 categories and rating how I think Overwatch 2 performs on a scale of 1 to 5. Then at the end I'll compile the results into one final overarching rating of Overwatch 2. Before I begin the review, just allow me to say that I will only be rating the game itself as it is today. Aside from the fact that they can affect some of the other categories, I will not be taking lore and cinematics into account, nor will I be heavily discussing Blizzard's poor management decisions or what this game could have been. I am reviewing Overwatch 2 the game. Nothing more, nothing less. With all of that out of the way, let's get into our first category, the core gameplay. In my opinion, this is the most important part of any game, as everything else kind of built on this. If a game's core mechanics are unfun, the rest of it doesn't really matter, especially in a multiplayer shooter like Overwatch, which can't rely purely on something like a good story. At least that's the way I see it. And I believe that Overwatch 2's core gameplay is great. It may have been the heroes or the cinematics which brought me to this game, but it's the gameplay which has kept me here. Of course, I'm going to be somewhat biased here and in this video as a whole, as I have been playing this game for a long time. But whilst trying to be as objective as possible, I still feel that Overwatch 2 has some solid core gameplay. This ranges between everything from the movement to the feel of the guns and even the team building aspects. Of course, it has its ups and downs, all games do, but in my opinion the core of this game is truly enjoyable. When it then comes to bouncing and people not cooperating and all these external problems, that's a separate issue, yet it's an issue which pretty much all games experience to some extent. It's not perfect, but as a 5v5 hero shooter, it still feels good at the base level, and so I'll be giving Overwatch 2 4.5 stars in this category. By the way, if you disagree with me on any of these ratings, I'd gladly hear how you feel in the comments down below. At the end of the day, this is simply my opinion, and you may see things differently. Next up, we have the hero roster of Overwatch 2, and as a hero shooter, this is understandably another one of the game's strong suits. I've always loved games which give you multiple avenues to enjoy them through having several different characters and playstyles for you to explore, and this is absolutely true when it comes to Overwatch 2. The game allows you to choose between 40 different heroes split into the roles of tank, damage and support. Every hero has their own relatively unique set of abilities, and although some aspects of a character may be similar to those of another, that's pretty much inevitable when you begin to have such a wide hero roster. Despite that, I believe that Overwatch 2's variety of characters is still a great thing. Instead of forcing everyone into a narrow corridor where you could only choose, let's say, your weapon, this game lets you play whatever they enjoy. Two entirely different people with entirely different tastes could both enjoy Overwatch 2, with one playing Mercy and another selecting Widowmaker. On top of that, it means that people like me, who enjoy having some variety, can switch between multiple characters and playstyles within the same game. Okay, so having different characters is good, but how are the heroes themselves? Well, I believe that each hero feels unique with their own interesting designs and abilities. They even have emotes, voice lines and interactions with other characters which display their personalities aside from simply their style of combat. This doesn't necessarily mean that I find every hero interesting, especially in relation to how they play in game, but others will love the same characters which I'm not as big a fan of. That's the beauty of it. Naturally though, everything isn't perfect. Some heroes are widely considered extremely annoying and counter-swapping, which is kind of a part of the core gameplay, but whatever, can be an issue. On top of that, having 40 different heroes can make balancing very difficult, and so that aspect of the game is far from perfect, and realistically, it never will be. Despite that, many of these issues aren't exactly unique to Overwatch 2, rather they are simply results of having various heroes in the first place. Overall, I'm giving Overwatch's hero roster 4 stars, mainly since the cinematics aren't a part of the equation. Now let's move on to the game modes. Some games only have one way of playing them, whereas others can have a plethora of various modes to choose from. Neither of these is objectively better than the other, both have their pros and cons, but game modes are still important to their respective games, so I think it's a good topic to discuss and evaluate. In Overwatch 2, there are several different types of game modes. There are 5 main ones which you are able to play in quick play or competitive, each not game-changingly different from the others, but still distinct enough to provide some variety. Each of these can also be played with varied character restrictions, including role queue, open queue, and no limits. Then there are also unique twists which can be applied in the arcade, such as low gravity, and even separate modes like deathmatch and elimination. On top of that, there are even custom games which can sometimes be really fun. As you can tell, Overwatch 2 has numerous game modes for you to choose from, but are they actually good? Well, some are better than others. Of course, preferences depend on who you ask, but there is at least something for everyone. In terms of the main modes, they're fine, but quality can vary significantly depending on which maps you like. On the whole, I'd rate Overwatch 2's game modes 4 stars, as the variety is nice but they aren't anything outstanding. Next, it's time to focus in on one of the game modes, so to speak, as our next category involves the competitive side to the game. I don't mean the pro scene, rather I'm referring to the ranked mode competitive. Now, some of you may think that this doesn't deserve a category all to itself, but I disagree. The quality of a competitive side to a game like this is honestly crucial to its success. A lot of people play Overwatch because they want to win and get good. Competitive is a way for people to test themselves and see how good they really are. It also gives them a challenge to work towards, aka climbing to the next rank, which is huge for player engagement. If a ranked mode in a game is bad, people simply won't feel inclined to play it, and so the game would lose a large chunk of its potential player base. On top of that, many streamers and content creators would leave the game, thereby negatively impacting it further. So, how is competitive in Overwatch 2? Well, let's just say that it's had its ups and downs over the years. Back in Overwatch 1, we used to have a numerical SR system, which wasn't great but fine. Then the game switched to the horror of it was this, and now we're back to what is basically just another SR system, but with a percentage instead of a number. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience with the current ranked system. I used to play competitive a lot in this game, but recently it just hasn't been my thing. I tried to rate it from an outside perspective, but do take this one with a pinch of salt. From what I can tell, Overwatch 2's current rank system is fine. Some people like it, and in fairness, it is definitely an improvement on the previous one, yet others complain. In fairness, that isn't surprising. No matter how good things are, some people will always complain. Anyways, the system seems decent enough. I like how it gives you information on why your rank changed in the way it did at the end of each match. However, it seems that the matchmaking could use some work. This is likely the result of people's ranks shifting since the old system, and some people who haven't played much ranked might now be in a different tier than they should be. Other than that, I have seen a few confusing images, but these are probably very extreme cases which rarely occur. As I said, it's difficult for me to rate, but overall it seems fine. Another thing to consider within this category is the ranked rewards. How are people incentivized to play competitive aside from purely the will to climb in rank? Well, I believe that Overwatch falls a bit short here. Currently, you can earn competitive points by playing ranked, which can then be spent on either gold or jade weapons. These are cool, I guess, but feel a little underwhelming in my opinion, especially when considering that this is the only ranked reward in the game. So, what do I rate Overwatch 2's competitive mode? I'd say it deserves 3 stars, as it isn't really good or bad, although I fully understand if you disagree and might want to rate it lower. Now that we only have 2 categories left, why not like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video so far? Anyways, our penultimate point of discussion involves the progression and monetization of the game. I feel like the two tie together quite heavily, so I've decided to group them into a single category. As you know, Overwatch 2 is free to play, and this comes with its set of positives and negatives. In terms of the positives, well, it's free. Granted, that is quite the big positive, but being free to play doesn't really offer any additional benefits. On the other hand, it does negatively impact the game in a few ways. Firstly, you don't get much for free. Of course, this makes sense as you haven't paid anything for the game, but a full price game does tend to offer significantly more items which you can earn by simply playing. This is how things tie into the progression. Aside from a battle pass, Overwatch 2 offers very limited things to earn and play for. As a new player, there are things to do such as unlocking more and more heroes by completing challenges, but once you've done that, there isn't much else. Occasionally there are events with challenges to complete for cosmetics, but when there isn't an event, challenges only reward Battle Pass XP. To be fair, the addition of Hero Mastery a few seasons ago is nice, but the rewards are very limited. So pretty much all we are left with is the Battle Pass, which you can't even maximize without spending. So if it's all we've got, how is the Battle Pass? In my opinion, it's actually not that bad, as they have been constantly improving it since the launch of the game. If we solely look at the free side of things, you can get a few epic skins, some credits to spend on old cosmetics, and even 600 premium currency. This means that you are able to unlock the paid battle pass every other season by simply playing the game. With a premium pass, you may not get any additional currency, but you do obtain several legendary skins, as well as a mythic of your choice. So as you can tell, it's actually pretty good nowadays. Despite that, the game's overall progression still feels quite lacking. Then in terms of the skin monetization, people may complain, but in reality it is in line with most other modern multiplayer shooters. On the whole, I'd rate this category a 3 out of 5, particularly for newer players, although for Overwatch 1 veterans it feels a little closer to a 2. Luckily it is improving, and hopefully at least the progression system can get even better in the future. Finally, we reached the last point of discussion for this video, but sadly there's not much to praise here. That's because it's time to mention the PvE. I did say that I wouldn't talk about Blizzard's management and what this game could have become, but that doesn't change the fact that this pathetic excuse of a story mode is in the game. Now, I will keep this short, as it realistically does not matter when considering the game as a whole, but I think it should still be mentioned. The Overwatch 2 mode known as Missions contains 3 PvE experiences: Resistance, Liberation, and Ironclad. Each of these involves some story as well as some robot shooting, and they last for about 20 minutes apiece. Already seems a bit lackluster. That ignores the fact that you also have to pay for these missions. To be honest, I don't remember the price, but either way that just about sums up the situation. The missions themselves aren't even that good. I don't have much more to say about them. As I said, they don't actually affect the rest of the game, but they still get an easy 1-star rating from me. So, what is my final rating of Overwatch 2? Well, if you do things mathematically, it gets a 6.5 out of 10. However, this doesn't really feel fair to me. As I said, the PvE doesn't really matter, and at the end of the day, the core gameplay is the most important aspect. As such, I'll be upgrading it to a 7 out of 10. But what do you think? How would you rate Overwatch 2? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.